Guys, welcome back. We're laughing at the start of this episode because we were picking which dad joke to tell at the end. As you know, every episode ends with a dad joke from me and a fascinating fact from Ashley, and they're always so fascinating, my love.
Some have been kind of dark lately. I'm going to lighten it up.
But the dad jokes just kind of got me. I don't know.
I just love seeing how excited you get about the dad jokes. It's
right. Notice she says she doesn't get excited about hearing them.
No, I love them. But I'm
I'm like a goofy child that just geeks out on dumb humor
the most.
And we're excited. But hey, before we get to the dad jokes at the end, we've got a great conversation about adoption.
Yes.
The whole process of adoption. And, you know, if you're here, you're considering adoption, you're in the process of adoption, maybe you have adopted. This is for you.
Yeah.
Even if you have not, even if you're thinking adoption's not even on my radar, listen to this episode for a couple of reasons. Number one, God might surprise you by kind of calling you to this, even if it wasn't planned. We know so many friends, close friends,
many
who that's been their story and it's been life-changing for them. And even if that doesn't happen to you, I think all of us are called to support adoption in different ways.
Yes.
So we have not yet felt led to adopt, but we've had so many friends who have, and we feel led to help them do it. And so we've helped support, we've helped fundraise. I think all of us are called to be part of that. But the process can look very different. We've known friends who've adopted foster care to adopt, others who've adopted internationally. A lot of different scenarios can happen, and each of them has unique blessings and unique challenges. And so from our own experience of just kind of walking through this process with multiple close friends, we want to share some of what we've seen, and hopefully this will be helpful to you.
It will. You know, years ago, we had a small group, in Evans, Georgia, that we would meet, and we'd been in group together for a long time, for years.
Doing life with folks.
Yes, and amazing folks. And I remember there was one point where I would say the overwhelming majority of the group had either adopted, like had an adopted child, or was currently fostering, like at that time.
Yeah.
And, or they were like
in the process of
adoption,
I think
like
it was
internationally.
Us and one other family were the only ones who
were the only ones, right? And so in our community, they do this thing called Trot to Adopt. And I remember we've had multiple times where we've given to that. We've walked,
it's a 5K that raises money for specific families.
Exactly. And so it's been really cool to walk alongside these people and encourage them in the process, but also, hear about some of the unique struggles that come with adoption. I would say, first, it's like a family who is called to adopt. And I do feel like it's a family calling. If you don't have any children yet, it's you and your spouse as a family having that calling to adopt, and you need to be on the same page with that. I feel like there's lots of things a family can do to prepare for that. I think it's important to really talk through maybe within some support groups. I know a lot of people, especially if you're in the foster care system, there's a lot of different, things that are required before you can even foster. And through that, they naturally form these support groups. Like there's meetings they have. And in talking with friends who have done this, they really are glad they have those groups because they teach about some of the unique challenges that adoption families will experience. And a lot of them are, a lot of these kids, especially if you're getting a child that is, older than 2, they will have seen some hard situations. They will have been through some hard situations. And I think they really try to talk through the sensitivities as parents that we need to have, right? Whether we're fostering or actually adopting this child, it's a really unique path. And I think too, in the foster care in particular, and the foster to adopt, you have to decide as a family, do we want a closed adoption or do we want an open adoption?
Yeah.
And we've known people who've chosen both of those paths. I will say the ones that are closed, that basically means that you and your child will have no contact with the family of origin. If it's open, you will have some level of contact. That means, and you agree on that, like whether it's going to be one time a year, it's going to be once a month. Are they able to come to the birthday parties? We've had several families where they've chosen the open adoption. And one in particular, we've had some friends who adopted twins, Wes and Kelly, and they chose the open adoption. And every holiday, they invite their birth mother to come. And I just think, man, if you talk about just being at the front lines of ministry and being the body of Christ, like, to me, that's just such God's heart. And they love it. It's not easy. It's not easy. And as their girls get older, there'll be more questions, but I think that's beautiful that they're still, allowing their girls to experience their birth mother and to have that relationship. But I will say, those who are like, gosh, I don't know if my heart can take that, often for different reasons and for very good reasons, will choose the closed adoption. And I will say too, there's times too where the birth mother wants a closed adoption. You know what I'm saying? Like for her and her mental health, she, awesomely gave birth to these children, but she can't continue on with that for whatever reason. And so you as the family, the birth mother and the parents, they have to decide what that's going to look like. And that takes a lot of prayer and a lot of conversations.
Yeah, it really, really does. A lot of conversations.
Yes.
Now, let's talk for a minute, though, about when one spouse really feels led to adopt and one spouse does not, right?
Which, we've known that dynamic.
We've known that dynamic. We've got some good friends, Matt and Kelly from church, and they've shared this story, so I'm sure they wouldn't mind us sharing it as well, that they're near the finish line for an international adoption of two boys from Haiti, but the journey to get them there was kind of difficult at first because Kelly felt very led to adopt. And Matt just wasn't there. They already had 4 kids. They'd started their family a little bit later anyway, so they felt.
And I think their youngest was like 2 at the time. She was still pretty young.
So we just felt like we're tapped out,
or maybe a little older. I can't remember.
We're exhausted. We're working. Like our cup is full right now. But she just felt so compelled to do this, so led to do this, and he did not. He was like, I'm done. Listen, God's not calling me to this. I'm exhausted. The thought of it wears me out. And it created some tension in their relationship because they both felt so strongly in opposite directions. And it's one of those things where it has to be one or the other. You can't compromise. You can't adopt half a child. It's like it's all or nothing. And so they decided, and I thought this was such a mature decision, to take some time just to pray about it. Like, we're going to take a period of time. I forget if it was 1 month or 3 months or whatever it was. And individually, we're going to pray. Lord, show me what you've desired here and bring me and my spouse to the same place. Because if it's your will, God, you're going to bring us to unity. You don't want division in our marriage. Bring us to a place of unity without any manipulation on either of our parts. God, just let your will be done. And as they both prayed, Kelly just kept feeling more and more sure that this is God's will. This is what he wants for us. And Matt was surprised by the fact that his heart started softening to the idea. Then he started being more open. And by the end of that prayer season, he was excited about it. He'd come to that decision completely on his own. God had done a work in his heart, and they were in agreement and were able to move forward as a whole family with excitement to really do this process together. And knowing it would be a long and arduous process because there's so much red tape. There's, with the international adoption, there's a lot to work through with any kind of adoption there is. But they've done it faithfully as a family, and their whole family has been praying for these 2 boys. They've been matched, praying for these 2 boys, and FaceTiming with them, and they'll be home soon, and it's exciting.
And it's years. We're talking multiple
it's a long process,
years. I want to say, I remember when we had dinner with them. At the end of that dinner, them sharing kind of after the prayer what conclusion they had come to and what God was revealing to them. And I remember Matt, he got so teary-eyed and the joy on his face. And it was like, it was just really cool to witness that as their dear friends. And anyway, I'm so excited. I can't wait to meet these boys, and everybody can, at church and beyond can love on them and welcome them. I want to say this is something where in adoption, many times, whether you're adopting stateside or adopting internationally, there are many families out there that will adopt children from a different culture. And that's the case with our friends. So they're adopting some Haitian children. And something that has been so cool about Kelly in particular and Matt is that they've been reading books that will teach them more about the Haitian culture and about, their kids and where they come from. And they want to keep on
to
celebrating that, right. And they've taught their kids that too. And so not to make them feel different, but because when you adopt kids, they're your kids. You might as well give them birth to them. We have to treat them as if we did. They're just as much part of the family as children who carry your DNA. They are spiritually carrying your DNA.
And all of us are adopted. God has adopted all of us through faith in Christ into his family. And so God's the first
He's our
adopted
father.
family.
Right.
And we I think it's a beautiful act when we do the same.
It is, and so that's something that as a family we have to be on board with that, with our children, with our spouse. Like they are one of us now, and that takes time to feel that. But I think we have to actively pursue that, And I know with Matt and Kelly in particular, she may be part of groups too. I think, there are different support groups, even with international adoption. I would heavily encourage somebody to do that so that you can learn more about it. But I think that culturally, we've got to embrace that. We've got to learn about the kids we're adopting. We've got to learn about where they came from. And maybe too, some of the things they may face that we don't even have any idea what that's like, culturally, and even like, coming from a different culture to another country, they might be a different race. Like we need to look into their world and really learn everything we can about them. And because I think sometimes the tendency is like, well, they're one of us, so they need to just adapt, which of course, they're in your family, but we have to realize too that they have a whole background too that we're embracing.
Especially when they're a little bit older. If it's an infant.
Yes, I know it's a little bit different.
It's a little different.
But even your infant, if they don't look like you, there's gonna be questions when people are like, are you adopted or what's going on there?
Let that child be able to celebrate
100%
their culture of origin, their country of origin.
Right.
I think that's so important to the whole person that child is and that child will grow to be.
Exactly. I want to talk about real quick, like the Metcalfs. They've adopted 2 boys from China at 2 different times. And I remember for them too, they got to spend some time in China. They celebrate that. One thing that was interesting that I've heard from multiple families is sometimes when just like with any siblings, okay, how siblings sometimes don't get along, you may adopt 2 kids from the same country, from the same family or not, or adopt at different times. Be prepared for when they come into your family, they might still not get along with your kids, right? You're going to have, just spats like here and there, just like your biological kids, right?
Get along sometimes.
And I think I've heard from different adopted, families who have adopted saying like, I don't know why I counted that out. Like I just, for some reason, didn't think that'd be a thing, but it is, and I think that we need to, just be prepared, and be prepared in the sense emotionally and mentally to not let that throw us off course. Because in talking with some other families who've adopted, those are some hurdles they said that really caught them by surprise, that they're like, I wish I would have just thought that through. So when I handled it, I could have handled it maybe a little bit better.
Yeah. So good. Yeah. So good. It's one of the most important decisions you'll ever make.
Yeah.
And as you make it, just know that there's a lot to consider. It can be expensive, especially international adoption.
Yes.
With foster care, it can be maybe less expensive, but there are additional hurdles there because, like, oftentimes, if the birth parents come back into the picture, and a child that you're growing attached to, trying to adopt, you might not have the option to.
Yes.
There's a movie. We know some friends at Keystone Church, Keller, Texas, near our headquarters here, who fostered and adopted through the foster system. And they've got some great stories through that and a beautiful family. And there was a movie that came out called Instant Family with Rose Byrne and Mark Wahlberg. Such a great movie, so entertaining, so much heart, so funny as well. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't show the whole picture, but it kind of walks through that process of foster to adopt and the good, the bad, and the ugly, the beautiful, the funny, all of it. And this family that has done that process said, as far as a movie can show the whole picture, we thought that was like really accurate.
They're living it, yeah.
It showed a lot of the ups and downs. It's a movie I highly recommend, and it's just a fun movie as well. There's another aspect of adoption that we should touch on, and that's when a couple is going through infertility, right? It's their desire to have a family, but their strong desire is we want biological children. We want biological children, and maybe you're there, and the stress that comes with that, the expense of fertility treatments and all of it. When you start making that decision of, all right, well, if it's not going to happen biologically, but God's put this desire in us to have a family, when do we need to start moving towards adoption? We have some friends that this was their story, and the wife, Karen, Jeff and Karen, I remember her talking about the fact that before they could really move forward with adoption, she had to give herself space to grieve.
She really did.
Grieve the death of the dream that she had for what the family was going to look like, that she was going to give birth, that she was going to have that experience. And so she could fully give her heart to these children in this adoption process, she had to go through this kind of period of grieving, which I thought was so healthy.
Very.
Of saying like, yeah, it's not going to look like I thought it was. I had this desire to give birth and all that. I'm not going to have that, but I can still have a family. And these children are going to be precious. And I believe that maybe the very reason why God closed the door on us being able to have kids biologically is because he has children chosen for us that we would have found no other way. But it's a delicate process and delicate conversations as you make the transition from saying, okay, well, the fertility treatments don't seem to be working, or it's not happening naturally. We still desire a family. When is it time to make that pivot and say, okay, well, maybe this isn't happening. God can still do a miracle at any point. I mean, we've known people that, move forward with adoption and then miraculously got pregnant at the same time and got both adopted and biological.
Right.
God can do whatever he wants, but that's a different scenario too, like than what we've talked about so far.
Well, because I think the grieving component.
Right.
And grief is I'm actually almost through getting my master's in biblical counseling. Hallelujah. Okay.
You've
I'm
worked
so
so
excited
hard.
about it.
I'm so proud. You're
but
amazing.
My class right now is actually crisis and trauma counseling. And I'm in the midst of going through grief counseling. And it's hard, because you're talking about all these heavy things. And infertility, they talked about how it's like the unspoken thing. People don't know what to say. They don't know how to help. Like it's just really hard. And I think the thing I've learned most in the class is like, we have to give each other, ourselves and our spouse space to grieve how they need to grieve. And in order to move forward, you have to honor the dream.
Yeah.
You have to honor the lost child. You have to honor every miscarriage that is a death. That we need to grieve over. Whereas I think they were saying in the book, like so many times, a lot of people who end up adopting have had all these miscarriages and they haven't allowed themselves to grieve, and they need to. They need to grieve that life, and it's going to look different for every person. But I think marking the fact that this is hard. I'm going through grief is healthy. Like we need to do that. And we can be stronger for it on the other side. And just seeing, you're talking about Jeff and Karen. Oh my gosh. Like after years of that, seeing them with their two kids, it is the sweetest
family.
Just the sweetest gift.
And they just treasure those kids.
They treasure them. And the kids are a gift to them, and they are such a gift to those kids and the whole community. And, I was thinking again about some other friends. Again, I told you, we know a whole lot of people, probably you do too. I mean, you are some of those amazing families who are adopting. And I remember we had friends in our small group who adopted from China. And when they got their little girl, this is something we need to talk about. Like the adoption company had not been completely honest with some of the health reports. Do you remember this?
Yeah.
And so when they got their daughter internationally, and so you need to just it's okay, but I mean, God worked it all out.
He did. And they love their daughter more than anything. They love their daughter. But it was just a surprise. Like,
they had not prepared.
These are new challenges we're going to have to, pretty, major challenges that we weren't prepared for that we're going to have to deal with. Yeah. But with any child, biological or otherwise, there are going to be challenges you weren't expecting. There are, but.
This is so true. And that's how they started to see it. Because I think sometimes when the child has something, like some kind of medical issue they didn't know about, they feel like they were lied to, which I mean, essentially, maybe they were, maybe people didn't know about it, but this child had gone through extensive testing, and there was it was clear that they weren't fully honest. Even in the videos they shared of this little girl, they did it in such a way that they would not see that she had cerebral palsy, and to some extent. And so it was they were like, we just wish she's still our little girl, but we just wish
we would have been prepared.
Because then we would have had, therapies, like we would have already, gotten all the therapies in place. With all that to say, they said that God really used it to just open their eyes to this, but also to, a whole new world that they didn't even know about, and they were able to very quickly adjust and get this little girl all the help that she needs. And she just lights up their world. It's been so beautiful.
In fact, we're going to see them in Lakeland, Florida. They're going to come to EXO Lakeland.
Are you serious?
And we're going to get to see them.
I didn't know that. It's been a while.
Just this
morning. Are you serious?
I know.
Oh my gosh.
So in real time, this is happening.
And I love it. And we keep up with them online, but there's nothing like being in person. I want to end this discussion real quick. Dave out of the gate talked about how, there's probably a lot of you watching and listening who maybe haven't adopted, or maybe you have adopted families in your life. And I think it's really important, no matter where we are in that, to support each other. And I think there's specific things we can do as the body of Christ to support families.
Absolutely, yeah.
So what would you first suggest, sweetie?
Well, if anybody in your life is going down that adoption journey, just let them know you're praying for them, you're cheering them on, you're praying for that child God has chosen for them. Celebrate this with them. Throw like a baby shower or a child gift shower. Let them have that experience. Yeah, to celebrate those moments, to really just come alongside them and cheer them on. Be open to helping financially. Adoption can be a very expensive process, and most people don't have the means to just write checks to do it. And so God calls you to it, he's going to provide, but he often is going to provide through generosity of others and other ways. And so be open to helping, or to even organizing some fundraising kind of activities to help out,
right,
so that the adopted family isn't the one feeling like they always have to ask, but come alongside them and cheer them on. And then just ask them, what can we do? What do you need?
Do you need meals?
Right. What can we do to help? Just be very specific and tell us. And we want to help. And when if they say like, oh, whatever, just say, no, please be specific.
Like, I'm bringing you something
today. Do you need money? Do you need childcare?
Yeah.
Do you need this? And then do what you can.
Clothes.
You need clothing, yeah.
I mean, do you have there's been several times we've done this where it's like, I have clothes in the attic that my kids have outgrown.
Right.
Here's some clothes.
Here you go.
And I want to say this real quick. We can do a whole episode on this, and I'd love to in the future. We do plan on bringing couples who have adopted and couples who have fostered, just to get, personal accounts.
Of course, yeah.
But I want to say this, in knowing many who have fostered, a lot of times if you are fostering, and maybe just fostering, you don't plan to adopt, but you want to be part of helping these kids, they get placements like that, and they need resources. And just to be able to be the hands and feet of Jesus, to say, I have some baby clothes in the attic, I have extra diapers, I'm going to bring you a meal today because you just got a child. There's some people, and maybe you are some of those people, where you're like, we don't feel called to adopt, but we want to do something. We want to open our home. Maybe you can be a foster parent. Maybe you can do something that's called respite care, which is for people who are fostering full time. They need respite, meaning like a day where they can just have a day off,
weekend off.
Yes,
that child
an overnight
come stay with you just in the short term.
In the short term,
and that's supporting the foster parents.
And it is a huge support.
Because if you're fostering, you can't just like hire a babysitter. It's a whole process. You have to be vetted, and
you do.
So
and you can't go out of town unless you have vetted respite care.
Yeah.
So a lot of times, like our friends who they've actually adopted and fostered. I remember Steve and Norma. I remember that they, if they had to go out of town, like on fall break with their daughter, they would get respite care. And she told me, she's like, it's such a blessing, these people. And a lot of times it's people who've raised their kids who still want to, actively help families, and they got, certified to be foster parents. I think you pretty much go through what foster parents do, but you just provide that respite care. It's amazing. There's some foster families that, in order to give their foster child or children like some playmates, they'll be respite care people here and there, and sometimes they'll trade off the respite care. But just look into it. If you feel even the littlest inkling of like God calling you to that, I know they need, people to do this who feel called to this and to love on these kids.
You'll change a life. You really will. And cheers to all you guys. Congrats. Thank you for all those who are doing this. You're doing God's work, and we're cheering you on. So we end every episode.
That's right.
With a fascinating fact and a dad joke. Fascinating fact. You want to go first?
Yes. Okay. So this is a fun one. And this is from, let me find the website, goodhousekeeping.com. And it just a fascinating fact about raising kids. This says that in 1962, in a book, Dr. Walter Sackett recommended giving black coffee to babies starting at 6 months of age. This would be the same doctor who would recommend serving bacon and eggs to babies starting at 6 weeks. And the little commentary that this article gave was, babies, you're never too young to act like Don Draper.
I like it.
Yeah.
So you're drinking bourbon by like
and then
9
bourbon,
months,
yeah, exactly.
I get it.
That's right.
That's fascinating.
I know.
All right, today's dad joke. It requires like a little bit of a visual, but I think I can describe the visual just for the listeners. So, So a polar bear walks into a bar, goes up to the bartender and says, hello, I would like a Diet Coke. And the bartender says, what's with the paws?
Get it?
And the polar bear raises his arms and says, I was born with them. Pause.
High five.
There we go.
High five.
Oh, I love the dad jokes.
I know.
And we love you guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Do us a favor. Share this episode. You might be a conduit that God uses with this message of adoption to confirm for someone that, yeah, maybe the Lord is prompting me to do this.
Yes.
You might be a source of encouragement for someone who's in the process to know that, hey, they're not alone. There are resources out there. You can also find us on Instagram at Dave and Ashley Willis. We love hearing from you over there. Send us messages. We read them, and we appreciate all you guys do.
We do, and thank you so much to those of you who've left reviews. Leaving a 5-star review and telling people why you like this podcast is the best way to get the news out and to help other parents in this hard job but awesome job of parenting. So thank you all so much, and God bless you. We'll see you next time.